Rob, I'm going to say this. And this comparison is completely on the field. Has absolutely nothing to do with off the field or off the court. Because obviously, these two men are completely unalike off the field or off the court. And what one did he had such an impact socially in this country as in comparison to Tom Brady. But on the field or on the court, Rob, I think that Tom Brady was like this generation's Bill Russell. And here's why I say that. They are each the greatest winners in the history of their sport. Bill Russell, we know, 11 championships, Rob, in 13 seasons. I mean, it's just unbelievable the winning he did. And Tom Brady winning 7 Super Bowls, that's more than any franchise. That's ridiculous. No franchise has 7 Super Bowls. The Steelers and the Patriots have the most with 6, and the Patriots got all 6 with Brady. And so they're the greatest winners in their sport. And I also think, Rob, that neither player individually was consistently recognized as the best player, like individual, right? When Bill Russell was playing, you also had Wilt Chamberlain, who was generally viewed as better individually, but Russell would always beat him. With Brady, as you said, I can't remember who said it earlier, or Mike Francesa, I agree. Peyton Manning is the best regular season quarterback ever, I believe. And he was during the Tom Brady era. Like, Rob, Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers, who both, of course, played during the Brady era, each of them have more MVPs and more Pro Bowl or All-Pro first teams than Brady. Brady's only got 3 MVPs, 3 All-Pros. That means for only 3 years was he like regarded as the best quarterback. You know what I mean? Generally regarded. Manny's got 7 or 5 MVPs and 7 All-Pros, and Rodgers has 4 of each, 4 MVPs, 4 All-Pros. So in that regard, it wasn't like Brady, and say in comparison to a Michael Jordan, who was just dominant, not only winning, but individually. I think that's similar to Russell. Third thing, Rob, and I got 4, clutch. I mean, Russell was steely, man. Ice in his veins, showed up in the big games. Wilt didn't always do that, but Russell did that, and that's why he was that ultimate winner. And Brady, Rob, with the game-winning drives, whether it ended in a field goal or a touchdown, the game-winning drives. And here's the other thing, Rob. Brady was incredible in big games. He really was. Even a lot of people look at him as a game manager for those first 3 Super Bowls, but he threw for 350-plus yards in his second Super Bowl, and had 2 touchdown passes. Rob, check out these numbers. And these are all-time greats. John Elway was 2-3 in the Super Bowl. He had 3 touchdowns in his Super Bowl career and 8 interceptions. In those 5 games, he had 3 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Peyton Manning, 2-2 in the Super Bowl, so 4 games. He had 3 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in his Super Bowl performances. Even Patrick Mahomes, who otherwise has been great in the postseason and was really good, obviously, in the first Super Bowl where he came back and beat San Francisco. But, Rob, his totals, 2 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions in his 2 Super Bowl games. Tom Brady, Rob, in 10 Super Bowl games, 21 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. The only one of that group, and even include Montana, who was better statistically in the Super Bowls.
11 touchdowns, no picks.
Right. Montana's the one that has better Super Bowl stats than Brady. But Brady still is the only one average over 300 yards in multiple Super Bowls. And so there's that. And then finally, Rob, they did it with two different groups. When Russell first gets to Boston, Kuzie's there, so they win some rings together. Sam Jones there. And then later on, when Kuzie's gone, Havlicek and his group comes in. Sam Jones was still there throughout. But kind of different groups, different supporting cast, if you will. Brady obviously had kind of two different eras, maybe three if you count the decade when he didn't even win it. So he did it with different groupings of teammates just like Russell. So that's why I say on the court, obviously not off the court. I think he's and I don't know that anybody, right? Just like no, we don't even think anybody can approach 11 rings. I don't really think anybody's going to approach 7 rings anytime soon.
And I hate to do this.
Yeah, there I go.
Because my issue is, even in Bill Russell's day, during that time, if you go through your sports history, all the great teams won a lot during those times because there was no free agency. Once you had a great team, you had a great team, Chris. It didn't change. You weren't going anywhere. So in the 50s, the Yankees went to the World Series 8 out of 10 years, Chris, in the 50s.
Right.
The Montreal Canadiens used to win all the time in hockey, in the NHL, right? Same 6 teams, same guys. They're the best players. They would win all the time. And it was the same with the Celtics during that era when they won all the time. So I'm not trying to take anything away from Bill Russell. I just think it's totally different because of there's no free agency, there's no players moving around, the best teams got the best players. I don't know. It was a weird era if you really take a look at who was winning. And then I think back then, Chris, was it the Packers? Really, like the Packers
won all the time, yeah.
Yeah, used to win all the time as well during those eras. And the other thing, too, is in the comparison of Bill Russell is the gap that Brady had. The 10-year gap, the 2 losses to Eli Manning. You know, I get the total number,
right,
but that's a huge gap between winning championships and you know, going such a drought and not winning another one for a long time. And then he had to say, if he had a normal, and I'm just obviously played 23 years, if he had a normal career, it would. I wonder how people would have looked at him differently if he won those 3 early, Chris, where he's a game manager and then, you know, didn't win again.
He wouldn't be the GOAT.
Right.
I mean, you know what I mean?
I wonder
people
where he
wouldn't
would
view
fit
him
in,
as the
though.
GOAT.
I get that, but where
he'd
would
certainly be a Hall of Famer. I mean, you know, we're not discussing what we did the first hour,
right.
but, you
I'm
know,
just
based
saying,
on his play.
Numbers, okay.
He'd be a Hall of Famer. He'd have 3. I mean, think about it. No, Montana's got 4. Bradshaw's got 4. And then nobody else. I don't even know if anybody else has 3. Rob G, can you look that up? You know, most of the other greats, Rob, only have, as far as quarterbacks, have 1 or 2. You know, Rodgers 1, Peyton 2, Elway 2, Steve Young 1. Aikman's got 3. Aikman's got 3. He'd probably be viewed similarly, but he was better, Rob. But his numbers, the thing is, his numbers are way better individually. Even if he never, let's say he retired, you know, in 2013 or, you know, before he had another run, his individual numbers were way better than Aikman's. Like even his second year when he was called a game manager, Rob, his second year in the league, or, you know, as a starter, he led the league in touchdowns. Brady.
Yeah, Aikman, though, they had a running game. It was a different offense, and you didn't throw the ball like you do now, Chris. You gave the ball to your running back. But that was still the early 90s. No,
I mean, let's not act like, no, I mean, I know his numbers wouldn't be up to today's standards, but his numbers weren't like eye-popping for his era.
Right. I'm just saying they weren't. But you would have a different game plan if you had a dynamic back like that. That's all I'm saying.
I feel you on that. But they still had Michael Irvin, too. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like they didn't have great
but Michael Irvin, I don't know what his numbers are.
Now, his numbers aren't – I mean, he's viewed as a top, you know, you could certainly argue a top 5 receiver of ever, but his numbers, because of the way they played, his numbers aren't crazy either.
Aren't that crazy.
I hear you, but it sounds like initially, right, like, Are you saying Brady winning 7 is more, for lack of a better word, impressive than Russell's 11 because of the era?
No, I'm just saying whenever we talk about Bill Russell, it's always, Chris, how many teams were in the league? Was it 10? Like just the steps that and I'm not trying to discount. That's what was there. He had to play with what was available, right? And that was the league. I'm not going to be mad at him because there were only 10 teams. But it's
his
like
first year there were 8.
8 teams.
And he won, his first year he won 97.
Chris, when I just brought up the Yankees in the 50s, remember, there were no playoffs. There were 12 teams in the American League, right? The Yankees finished in first place. They went straight to the World Series against the National League team, and that was it. So when you say, Yogi Berra won 10 World Series, well, it's a little different than Derek Jeter having to go through 3 rounds of playoffs, right? Just to get to the World Series.
No, especially in baseball. When,
it's totally
you have
different.
A bad week and you're out, And so, I feel you on that. But, yeah, I think, Rob, just generally speaking, you make a good point, but they're just the greatest winners of each sport. Would you agree with that? Or you think you wouldn't call Russell that?
No, 11 championships in 13 years. It's hard to argue with that. He was a great winner. And still, that didn't mean just because there were 8 teams, Chris, that he had to win. Right? Somebody else could have.
Wilt was in the league,
right. Somebody
eventually, and Oscar and all these other guys.
I don't want to bash.
Right.
I don't want to bash.